I can promise you that you've never eaten a chocolate sheet cake like this. The sponge is a cross between a brownie and a chiffon cake, and the frosting is a cross between a fudge frosting and ganache. I'm sharing some very interesting techniques in this recipe, so make sure you're watching till the end. Let's get started. You'll first preheat your oven to 160 degrees Celsius or 325 degrees Fahrenheit. And first we'll begin by melting our chocolate. I have taken some semi-sweet chocolate which has at least 57% cocoa solids. I'm popping this in the microwave at 30-second intervals till it's glossy and smooth and well melted like this. Now it's pretty warm at this point, so I will keep this aside to let it cool down slightly. And in the meantime, we'll work on the chiffon sponge. So for this, we need egg yolks and whites. So I will need 5 yolks and 5 whites. So I will separate them first. I like to separate them when the eggs are still very cold, and I love using my clean hands because I find it much easier to separate the eggs that way. Now into the yolks, I will add some light brown sugar. The molasses content in the light brown sugar really enhances the moistness of the cake, making it super tender and moist. Give it a good whisk for a minute, and by the end of that 1 minute, you'll see that it has increased quite a lot in volume and has gone really pale and fluffy. That's exactly what we want. Now into this, I am going to add some room temperature softened cream cheese. The addition of cream cheese in our chocolate sheet cake recipe here really transforms the texture as well as the flavor, making it extremely tender and moist, and also adds a much better flavor. So give it a good whisk until it's well combined, and then you'll pour in your cooled melted chocolate and use your whisk again to just mix it all together until you don't see any streaks of the chocolate in this mix, and it's a nice homogeneous cake batter. That is looking good. And now into this, I will also add some room temperature full fat milk. I'll also add some vanilla extract and give it a good whisk first. This is a very unique recipe, and when I was developing it, I really wanted something that had the fudginess of a brownie, but at the same time, I also wanted to be light and feathery like a chiffon sponge. And this cake recipe gives you the best of both worlds. It is unbelievably tender, and one of the main contributors for that is also the oil that we are adding here. It's edible neutral tasting vegetable oil. It helps keep the sponge really tender and soft even after it has been refrigerated. So once you've added the oil, just give it a good whisk until it's all well combined and it looks like a nice smooth, very runny batter. We will be adding our dry ingredients next, so don't worry about how runny that looks right now. Into this, I am going to sift in my all-purpose flour. Now, we do need about 300 grams of all-purpose flour, and my sieve isn't large enough to contain all of it in one go. So I've added a little bit of the all-purpose or plain flour and a little bit of the cocoa powder. I'll sift that in first, and then I'll add the remaining all-purpose flour and the cocoa powder as well. And along with that, I will also add my leavening agents, which is my baking soda and baking powder. And I'll also add some instant coffee powder, and I'll flavor it with some salt. The instant coffee powder enhances the flavor of the chocolate, and the salt just helps balance all of the flavors. If you skip the salt, you'll find that the cake tastes really bland. Then you will take your spatula and gently fold in the dry ingredients. And when they are almost combined, I will switch the spatula and use my whisk and just give it a good whisk until I don't see any more lumpy bits from the dry ingredients, and you get a really nice velvety smooth cake batter. That is looking absolutely perfect. I'm going to leave this on the side after I have scraped down the sides and the bottom of the bowl with my spatula, because now we're going to add an incredible amount of lightness using our egg whites. So we'll whip it up to a meringue. So for that, I will add some salt first, and on the lowest speed setting of my electric beaters, I'll mix it for about 3 minutes. At this point, it will increase a lot in volume and it will look very, very foamy like this. And after about 3 minutes, I'll increase the speed to medium and I'll set the timer for another 3 minutes. And during this time, I'll start adding my caster sugar, a spoonful at a time, and I'll mix really well between each addition of the caster sugar. And similarly, I'll keep adding the sugar until all of it has been used up. So at this point, you will have been whipping your egg whites for about 6 minutes, 3 minutes on low, 3 minutes on medium, and then you'll increase the speed to high and mix it for 3 more minutes till you get stiff peaks like this. That is perfect. Now I'll add a couple of dollops of this whipped meringue, and I'll use my whisk and just whisk it into the cake batter. This helps loosen up the cake batter, so you don't have to worry too much about deflating the egg white mixture or the meringue that you've just created. That's a sacrificial amount that you add just to help loosen up the cake batter. And then you will start adding the rest of the meringue, and this time you will just fold it in gently, ensuring that you are not knocking out all of that air. You want to be very mindful that you leave it nice and airy and only fold it gently until it just gets combined and you don't see any streaky bits from the meringue anymore. So be very gentle at this point and keep adding the meringue mix a little at a time until you've used all of the meringue, and fold it gently between each addition. Once your batter is ready, you will pour this into a 9 by 13 inch baking tray that has been greased really well and lined with parchment paper with plenty of overhang on one side so you can easily lift the cake out of the tin. You'll tap it gently against the work surface to release any air pockets, and this will bake in the oven at 160 degrees Celsius or 325 degrees Fahrenheit for about 33 to 35 minutes. A skewer, knife or a toothpick inserted in the center should come out clean, then let it cool down completely. And while that's happening, we'll start working on our fudgy ganache topping. For that perfect balance of flavors, I'm going to take a mix of semi-sweet and milk chocolate, and I will add this into a microwave safe bowl along with some whipping cream which has at least 35% fat, then some sweetened condensed milk, and we will also add some golden syrup. You can also use honey or liquid glucose instead. Golden syrup, honey or liquid glucose are a kind of invert sugar, and that helps add a beautiful texture, glossiness to your fudgy ganache, and at the same time the mouthfeel is so incredibly smooth. I have also added some instant coffee powder there, and I will keep popping this into the microwave at 30-second intervals until it has all come together and well melted. As you can see, this is one of the easiest ganache toppings or fudgy ganache toppings that you'll ever make. All you need is a microwave safe bowl. You can also do this on a double boiler, by the way, but everything just comes together in one bowl. Finally, once everything has melted well, you will add some room temperature butter and start whisking it in. The heat from the fudgy ganache will automatically melt the butter and emulsify it, giving it a glossy sheen. We've just prepared this, so it is really warm and hence it's also very runny. So you do want to pop this in the refrigerator to cool down completely, which will help thicken it up considerably. So take a sheet of some cling wrap and cover the ganache, making sure that you're touching the surface of the fudgy ganache, and then pop this in the refrigerator until it has cooled down and set. And this is what it looks like once it has set completely. It is really creamy, smooth, and just absolutely incredible. I'm going to pop this on top of my cooled cake. I'll make sure that I'm spreading it all over the surface of the cake, and then I'll use my offset spatula, smooth it around, make swirly patterns like this. I will then refrigerate it for at least 4 to 5 hours so that the fudgy ganache can really set well on top of the cake. And once we're ready to serve, I will top it with some chocolate shavings. You can top it with sprinkles or any kind of topping of your choice. And then it's time to slice and serve. Just look at how amazing the texture of this fudgy chocolate sheet cake looks. The cake sponge itself is fudgy, almost like a brownie, and feather light at the same time. And that ganache is glossy and velvety, and the mouthfeel is just so exquisite. This fudgy chocolate sheet cake is going to become a regular in your home, perfect for celebrations or when you're hosting friends or family for dinners. And if you enjoyed this recipe, you should also check out my chocolate mousse cake recipe that I know you're going to enjoy as well.